John's hand hovered over the chest as the cold whisper echoed through the dark basement. The voice had a guttural edge, like it came from the very walls of the house itself, a warning too chilling to ignore. "Don't open it!" Claire's breath caught in her throat, her body trembling from the weight of the unseen presence surrounding them. The darkness felt alive, shifting, pressing against them. The heavy thumping from the chest continued, each thud more insistent than the last, as though it was growing impatient with their hesitation. John's mind raced. He could feel the intensity of Claire's fear pulling at him, but he couldn't shake the need to know what was inside. It could be the key to unraveling the mystery of the Martins' disappearance. But then again, every instinct screamed that this was no ordinary chest. What could possibly be so dangerous that the house itself would try to stop them? "John," Claire whispered again, her voice breaking. "We need to get out of here." He turned to face her, his heart pounding. He could see the fear in her eyes. But there was something else there too, a growing sense of desperation. She was just as trapped as he was, and yet she wanted to escape. He didn't know if it was stubbornness or something deeper that drove him to ignore her pleas. But as he gazed back at the chest, the feeling of being watched deepened. It was more than just a feeling. It was as though something was waiting for them to make the next move. A decision had to be made. "I'm opening it," John said, his voice rough. "No, John, please." Claire reached for his arm, but he shook her off gently. This was something he had to do. She could stay behind and escape if she wanted, but he couldn't leave here without answers. With a deep breath, John placed his hands on the chest. It felt cold, unnaturally so. The thumping inside seemed to quicken, as though whatever was trapped within was aware of his intentions. He lifted the heavy lid with a creak, holding his breath, expecting something, anything, horrible to leap out at him. But instead there was nothing, just a thick layer of dust and cobwebs inside, with no sign of the mysterious noise, no creature, no threat. For a moment, John felt a rush of relief. Maybe they had been overreacting. Maybe the Martins had simply left and left behind nothing but empty mysteries. Then the shadows in the basement seemed to twist and move, rippling unnaturally. The temperature dropped further, and the whispering came again. Only this time, it was louder, clearer, as if it were coming from right behind them. "Leave." John froze, and Claire's hand shot to his arm. There, in the corner of the basement, where the shadows seemed darkest, something shifted. It wasn't human. It wasn't even alive in the way John understood it. From the darkened corner, two glowing eyes blinked into existence. The eyes were an unnatural shade of yellow, gleaming like shards of broken glass. A figure began to take form, shifting, bending, and stretching into a grotesque shape that resembled a man but was somehow wrong, too wrong to describe. John's pulse raced. "What? What is that?" Claire gasped, her voice trembling. That's not possible." The figure moved closer, its shadowy limbs stretching unnaturally as it slid from the corner, blocking their only way out. Its mouth opened, but no sound emerged, just the oppressive silence, until the voice came again, as cold and sharp as ice. "You should have stayed away." Suddenly, the chest that John had opened slammed shut, as if it had never been touched. The thumping inside resumed, now louder than before, as if the thing inside was enraged at being disturbed. "What is it?" Claire choked out, backing up against the wall. John didn't know, but the thing in front of them, the shadowy figure, was closing in fast, its mouth distending in an eerie smile that chilled him to the bone. The air grew thick with a suffocating pressure, and John realized that they weren't going to make it out by running. Not unless they faced this thing head on. He looked around frantically for a way out, a weapon, anything to help. But the shadows were thickening, swallowing up everything in sight. Then through the dark, his eyes landed on something. A small ornate mirror hanging on the wall. A reflection of something that had to be there. It was the only object untouched by the creeping darkness. "Claire! The mirror!" John shouted, grabbing her wrist. "We have to get to it!" Without thinking, they bolted toward the mirror. The figure moved faster, lunging toward them. But it was too late. As John reached the mirror and grabbed its edge, he felt an electric shock run through him. The darkness recoiled as though the mirror was somehow repelling it. "What's happening?" Claire gasped, looking around. John didn't have an answer. But then the figure screeched, a high-pitched, horrifying sound that made their skin crawl. The mirror began to pulse with a faint light, and for a moment, John saw it. Another shadow, a form, a person standing behind the creature. It was alive. The figure was the Martins. "Help us!" A voice echoed, distorted and weak, like the sound of a dying wind. Before they could respond, the figure in front of them howled, its eyes flashing with fury, and the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, sending them tumbling backward into the dark. When they awoke, the basement was silent again. The air was still thick with the same uneasy tension. But the creature was gone. John and Claire found themselves alone, the Martins nowhere in sight, and the house eerily empty once more. But the shattered mirror lay in pieces at their feet, and in the center of the fragments, a single message was carved into the floor. "You are now part of it." And somewhere in the darkness, a new thumping began. Stay tuned for part 4, where the truth behind the Martins' disappearance will finally be revealed, and the Thompsons will have to confront the horrifying consequences of their actions. The darkness is far from over,